Welcome. We're looking at Matthew chapter 14, 22 to 33. Jesus walks on the water. Immediately, Jesus made the disciples get into the boat and go on ahead of him to the other side while he dismissed the crowd. After he had dismissed them, he went up on a mountainside by himself to pray. Later that night he was there alone, and the boat was already a considerable distance from land, buffeted by the waves because the wind was against it. Shortly before dawn, Jesus went out to them walking on the lake. When the disciples saw him walking on the lake, they were terrified. "It's a ghost," they said, and cried out in fear. But Jesus immediately said to them, "Take courage, it's I, don't be afraid." "Lord, if it's you," Peter replied, "tell me to come to you on the water." "Come," he said. Then Peter got down out of the boat, walked on the water, and came toward Jesus. But when he saw the wind, he was afraid, and beginning to sink, cried out, "Lord, save me." Immediately, Jesus reached out his hand and caught him. "You of little faith," he said, "why did you doubt?" And when they climbed into the boat, the wind died down. Then those who were in the boat worshipped him, saying, "Truly, you are the Son of God." This is the gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, O Christ. So, last week and this week, we're looking at the Sea of Galilee and what happened around there. So I'm trying to work out the timeline just to sort of try and get it sorted out in my head. So here goes. First of all, Jesus hears the terrible news about the death of John the Baptist, and he wants to be alone to process that death. So he gets his disciples to run him across the lake in their boat, except that the crowds already sense where he's going to be, and they've rushed there before him. And these crowds are people who are desperate for good news, desperate for some sort of good God presence in their lives, desperate to do better than just have kings like Herod and emperors like Caesar ruling over them who care nothing for them. And there's Jesus. When he sees them, he doesn't say, "Oh no, I wanted to do my own quiet time and I needed my own processing time. I can't fix you." No, there's gut level response. There's that compassion, and he reaches out and heals them. And then it's not only healing, the day's coming to the end, and there's all these people, thousands, literally thousands, hanging around him, and there's no shops or anything nearby. And so he sets a challenge to the disciples when they say, "Come on, time to send them off home. You feed them." We've only got 5 loaves and 2 fishes. And Jesus takes them, lifts them up to heaven, sees his Father in heaven, gives thanks for those handful of things, and then everyone reclines like they're at a banquet, and there is more than enough. So now it's right on sunset maybe. He sends the disciples back by boat, he dismisses the crowd, and now it's time for his self-care. He prays on the mountain by himself. So he's there a few hours. We're in the night phase now, and suddenly this storm has developed on Lake Galilee. Now I tried to just look up people's comments about storms. Yes, you do get strong winds because it's below sea level. It's part of the beginning of the Rift Valley between the big tectonic plates of Asia and Africa. And there's high hills around. You can get a mixing of winds and everything. But extreme storms, like the one there on that right, that seems to be pretty rare. Anyway, the disciples are far from shore. The wind and waves are against them. And I don't know if you've ever been out on the water in a boat and you've lost power and there's a storm around you. It is absolutely frightening. These are professional boaties, but they're struggling. The wind and the waves are against them. And don't know how they're feeling. Not good. And it's the last watch of the night. So 4 watches during the night. This is 3 to 6 a.m. And they've had it. And Jesus comes to them walking on the water. And that walking on the water, that's a God characteristic. That's one of the things that Job says about God in Job chapter 9, verse 8. And so they see this apparition, this phantasm in the Greek. It's a ghost. And they are even more scared. So they're utterly exhausted, they're drained, they're petrified, and then there's this ghostly apparition on top of that. It's all too much. Have courage, says Jesus. I am. Stop being afraid. And that word, I am, that's the same I am that God uses in the Old Testament when he speaks to Moses out of the burning bush. I am who I am, the great divine name of God. And there's Jesus saying, I am. So then the question is this really Jesus? Or is it a ghost, in spite of the words that he said? And Peter does the test. Good old Peter, you can rely on him to jump in. If this is really you, then bid me come out to you. And it's interesting. It's okay here to test Jesus. It wasn't okay for Satan to test Jesus. No, if you're really the Son of God, why don't you command these rocks to turn into bread? Because you're hungry and you need to look after yourself. No, Peter does the test and he's welcome. And there are times in our lives when we're welcome to put God to the test. If you're really the God who looks after me, what's happening? What's going on? Put it out there. See what happens. In this case, it's the invitation. Step on out. And he does. And then, of course, he takes his eyes off Jesus and he sort of realizes where he is. Whoops, I'm not meant to be here. This isn't possible. And he goes down and he calls out for help. Lord, save me. And the response is instantaneous. Jesus reaches out. O man of little faith, why did you doubt? And isn't that the word that's said to us plenty of times in crises and crunch times? Little faith, why did you doubt that I wasn't with you in this difficult or very confronting situation? Don't lose heart. Have courage. They both step into the boat. The wind stops. And then they worship him. Truly, you are the Son of God. Their understanding of who he is has just gone up or down, one way or the other, a whole notch. This isn't about Jesus proving his divinity by walking on water. It's the same Jesus who met the large crowds the previous afternoon and had compassion on them. Just the same as Jesus brought strength and food to people who are weak and hungry, here now he's coming to disciples who are despairing and in danger of literally going down. Jesus has compassion on them just as he does on us. We always have a God of grace and mercy. We have a Jesus who meets us as we are, where we are. And we trust that and we go with that. We go forward a few chapters in Matthew and we come to the crucifixion, the arrest, the trial, the crucifixion. And there's Jesus on the cross. Save yourself if you are God's son. Remember Peter saying, if it's really you, command me to step out. But this is a different sort of testing. It's not an actual request. It's just horrible, abusive stuff. So Peter does that test and he's invited to step out. And now it's Jesus who has to do the test himself. My God, why have you abandoned me? He cries out in the words of Psalm 22. Remember in Psalm 22, half of it's that bitter litany and complaint to God, and then the rest is a confession of faith. So by saying this, is Jesus saying, yep, I know you've got me, but it feels terrible? Or is he just saying, it feels terrible, and where are you? Either way, it's faith at work. And Jesus then keeps doing that journey into death on the cross. Finally, there's a loud cry, and then he goes down into death. He's taken down off the cross and into the grave. And then there's the earthquake. And even as he's just giving up that loud cry and the temple curtain is torn in two, there's the earthquake. And there's the centurion saying, truly he was the Son of God. So those paradoxes, the very heart of faith. Easter paradoxes. I can't control everything, but somehow it's okay. Jesus looks like a loser, but he's an utter winner. And sometimes I have to lose to win. Sometimes I have to fail to learn a new way of doing things, to experience success. And what looks to me as ugly turns out to be the most beautiful things of all. And what leads to death, finally, with Christ, is always about life. So we're learning to live with the unexpected and the unwanted. Peter, in his Easter sermon in Acts chapter 2, or Pentecost sermon, quotes the scripture, "You will not abandon me to the realm of the dead. You will not let your Holy One see decay. You have made known to me the paths of life. You will fill me with joy in your presence." Those psalm words applied to Jesus in the grave, and they apply to each one of us when the storms are around us, when we're in the dark, when we're absolutely scared, when we don't even know if we're going to get through the next 5 minutes. A ye of little faith. Well, whether we have faith or not, faith has us. Christ's faith and trust has us. Be assured there is always a deep down love and hope at the heart of everything. Bless you.